The Animorphs have no idea what just happened, but they can't let someone get their kill, so they morph into hammerhead sharks and enter the magic rubber cave that'll never be properly explained. The Sea Blade and fish people are gone, and at the back of the cave, the Animorphs discover a Technicolor sci-fi door that opens into a large enclosed space. Jake describes it as a cavern that could hold Manhattan. And then they see something else. A few dozen yards away was a ship. A wooden ship. It had 3 tall masts, a single deck of gun ports, 18 in all open, all revealing the blunt stouts of old brass or iron cannons. The sails hung limp from most of the yards. The ropes and cables sagged, but nothing was as rotted as it should be. After all, no ship of this type has sailed in almost 200 years. What's weirder is that the ship is occupied by a bunch of dead pirates, all gutted and stuffed and turned into mannequins. And that only leads to more ships, and the Animorphs soon realize that they're in a gallery of sunken vessels, from Spanish galleons to Japanese aircraft carriers, all of them with stuffed bodies on display. These ships and boats are from everywhere, Marco pointed out. Atlantic, Pacific, thousands of miles away. That galley has to be from the Mediterranean. This is impossible. Why, yes, Marco. Yes, it is. And it's only going to get more stupid. So the Animorphs morph owl and start flying around, eventually slipping through what I can only guess is the nightmare tunnel from Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, and finding themselves before a great patchwork city, made up of random ship parts and gold plating, occupied with these fish people. Blue skin and gills and web digits and the works. Not a bad body on that one, Marco said. That earned him stares from all of us. What? I can't compliment a fish girl? As you'll see, like 40% of this book is about sex with fish people. So yeah, Atlantis, just with the serial numbers scratched off. The Animorphs land and observe as the fish people escort the Hork-Bajir crew off the Sea Blade, though Visor 3 is nowhere in sight. We're just assuming Visor 3 is there, because Visor 3 is always there. Well, Jake has seen enough to consider this a victory, so they start flying around in search of an exit. They eventually get tired and demorph on some floating plants, only to be immediately jumped and netted by a group of fish people. Only Tobias manages to escape. Jake, this is insane, Marco said. Rachel's right. Let's bust out of here. Now. No way these guys are going to be able to haul a bag of gorilla and grizzly. Woomph, woomph, woomph. We don't know where the Visor is, I said. Don't know what Hork-Bajir might still be loose. We don't even know if these guys might be infested, I said in between getting mouthfuls of dank water. My knees were crammed into my chest, and my left arm was already going numb. But as uncomfortable as I was, as we all were, I knew we just couldn't risk morphing. Not out in the open, in full view, with the Visor on the loose. I would be happy to sever the net with my tailblade and free us, Prince Jake, Axe said tightly. You and the others would not have to morph. No, not yet, anyway. We don't want to fight with these guys. They're civilians as far as we know. We don't know what we're up against. We wait. Watch. Let's escape by morphing. No, we can't. They might be the enemy. Let's escape without morphing. No, these guys are not the enemy. God damn it, Jake, stop sucking at the whole leader thing. Jake's general incompetence in this book is credited to the trauma over Han's death, but as I was saying earlier, the book completely fails to sell that. So we get an entire book of Jake fucking up a bunch and Han being the excuse he comes up with. Animorphs is not a series that typically indulges in the idea of an unreliable narrator, but here it's the only way to really reconcile Jake's failures with the excuse he gives. So the Animorphs are taken before the Queen of the Fish People, Queen Sako, and she identifies her people as the Nartec. She speaks English fluently, as well as a half a dozen other languages, and gives off a strong condescending vibe as she announces a great feast that the Animorphs are invited to. But don't you dare escape, mwahaha! So we cut to said feast, and Queen Sako lays out the history of the Nartecs. They are indeed human, a race of ancient humans that lived on an island thousands of years ago. But the waters slowly began to rise, so the Nartec built large walls to keep the city safe, but eventually the waters became too deep and the Nartec were forced to completely enclose the island in a huge dome. From there, they used some glowing rocks for illumination and gradually evolved to fit their new aquatic environment. Axe speculates that these glowing rocks are actually radioactive and hasten the Nartec's mutations. Queen Sako proclaims the Nartecs as the rightful rulers of the world, and claims that they have been taking the remains of sunken ships and have been reverse engineering their technologies and learning their languages through the books on board. Not to mention studying any survivors, then killing them, stuffing their bodies, and putting them on display. Then she talks about how scouts have been sent up to the surface, but have never returned. But with the recent capture of the Seablade, Queen Sako feels confident in her ability to stage a few raids and maybe even a conquest or two. So that's the Nartecs. There's a lot to unpack here, and most of it is a load of bullshit, but hey, you're here for the rants anyway. First off, this civilization has to be located in the Pacific Ocean, only a few miles off the coast of California. Okay, so we'll blame the sinking of the island on the San Andreas Fault or something. These are very active waters, with a lot of military vessels passing through, including nuclear submarines. How has no one detected a stone dome the size of an island so close to the coastline? Oh, but it must be really deep underwater, right? Well, no, because the Animorphs were able to comfortably swim to its entrance in hammerhead shark morph. Now, the species of hammerhead the Animorphs are morphing is almost certainly the great hammerhead, which tend to live fairly close to the surface around coral reefs. They don't descend any further than 230 feet. But let's give this the benefit of the doubt and say they're morphing smooth hammerheads, which can descend a little over 600 feet. The scalloped hammerhead can descend 1,600 feet, but those don't live anywhere near the west coast. So the cave entrance is, at best, 600 feet below the surface. According to the Queen, the height of the dome is at least 200 feet above that. So the top of the dome is only 400 feet below the surface of the ocean. This thing should have been detected ages ago, especially if these guys are dragging entire aircraft carriers around. Yeah, that. The entire plot hinges on the idea that these people's culture revolves around tracking down and capturing sunken vessels and their crew. The point is made that there are ships from both the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean, and in fact, the slight majority of these ships are European in origin. Since the Nartec have never successfully crossed dry land, that means they somehow magically detect a sunken ship in the Atlantic, take the long walk down and up South America, lasso up the ship and the still living crew, and drag it the long walk back home. Now, we don't actually know how they do this. It's very possible that they don't tie it up and drag it along the ocean floor, but rather disassemble it, carry the parts back home, and reassemble it. But the years it would take to make such a trip doesn't account for all the captured survivors. This would make more sense if the Nartec were spread out over the entire ocean, but it's pretty clear that this dome is supposed to be their only home. Disassembling the ships, which again is just my theory and is never mentioned in the book itself, would go ways to showing the Nartec reverse engineering all the technology, but where the hell did these guys get the magic expanding caves and sci-fi doors and death tunnels? What boat did those come from? And how could they possibly be fluent in any surface language, let alone so many? They have some books, mostly technical manuals, which would be quickly destroyed by salt water. They have some survivors, but based on their actions around the Animorphs and the captured Yeerks, they don't seem really all that eager to pump these people for information. Even if I accepted that these people might actually grasp basic grammars of these languages, their vocabulary would still be incredibly limited, not to mention outdated. But having them speak fluent English makes it easy. While the idea of humans evolving to fit such an extreme environment isn't without merit, somehow springing fully functional gills and becoming truly amphibious over the course of a few thousand years is pretty much impossible. Slightly bigger eyes, bodies built for swimming, hell, even webbed fingers and toes, I'll take that. But gills? Even random mutations brought out by radiation would need a biological basis to exist. A clitoris on the back of your throat would be more likely, since human beings actually have clitorises. But what we don't have are dormant gills or similar organs. Besides, the radiation from the glowy rocks would probably just kill them with cancer instead of giving them magic gills. All of which contributes to the big question. Why are the Nartecs humans and not aliens? Everything about them, their biology, their unexplained technologies, their accumulation of human technology and test subjects, could be hand-waved away if they were just a one-off alien race that crash-landed on Earth. It would allow for the civilization to be located farther away from land and deeper in the ocean. You could change the story from a race for the Pemlite ship to a race to these guys, make them actually part of the plot and not just something the Animorphs and Yeerks randomly bumped into. It would have made for a more sound story. Maybe still a badly written one, I don't know, but at least there'd be some kind of sense to it all. Is there an actual reason in making these guys mutated humans? Yes, kind of, but we'll get to that at the end. The Animorphs, despite being prisoners, are allowed some free reign to walk around the city for, reasons. Oh, and Queen Sako. They play her up as the big guest villain, like she was going to be our major antagonist for this book, but nope. After the feast, she is never seen again, meaning her character existed entirely for the sake of dumping exposition. Bravo. Axe manages to look over some records of population and deduces an ulterior motive for the Nartecs capturing them. The high levels of radioactivity have allowed them to undergo accelerated rates of mutation, but now the destructive mutations are beginning to pile up, and they have insufficient sources of new genetic material. Why? I asked. Cassie had the answer. Fewer ships sinking. They must have been breeding with the limited numbers of surface humans, survivors of sinking ships. See, what did I tell you? Fish fucking. I hear this book is a big hit with Link Ruto shippers. But even after learning this, the Animorphs make no serious attempt to escape. Jake figures they still have to destroy the Sea Blade so that the Nartec can't use it to wage a fruitless war against the surface, but he doesn't come up with a plan to do so, and the Animorphs just get jumped, drugged, and put on a table for dissection and maybe fish fucking. Because Jake was too wishy-washy to do anything, because he saw a Hork-Bajir he didn't know die. This book sucks. Tobias shows up in the nick of time, morphing as a Nartec guard and knocking out the scientist in charge. Once the Animorphs regain their senses, they make a run for the Sea Blade and battle morph in hopes of finding a way to destroy it. The Nartecs catch wind of what's going on, and there's a chase involving spears and longbows and such, and then the Animorphs have to fight from within the Sea Blade, occupied by a bunch of freshly stuffed Hork-Bajir. Yeah, the Nartecs have shown to just plain suck in combat, which makes you wonder how they overpowered Hork-Bajir in the first place. This is when Visor 3 finally shows up, morphed as an alien that's pretty much just made of fire, because Visor 3 never played Pokemon. He manages to fight the Nartecs out of the Sea Blade, and the Animorphs find themselves having to make an uneasy alliance with him. They don't know how to pilot the Sea Blade, and Visor 3 can't pilot it alone. So they do, but Jake finally comes up with an idea that works by using a broken door to drown Visor 3 while the Nartec explode the Sea Blade with torpedoes. The Animorphs escape, Visor 3 escapes, and everyone goes home. Filthy creatures, Rachel spat. Someone needs to wipe them out. The Nartec? Cassie asked. Who else? What they did to all those people, all those sailors, those flyers back there? Filthy, sick creatures, as bad as the Yeerks. I believe you overlook one fact, Axe said. Yeah? All those sailors back there? All those humans the Nartec defiled? Many of them had sunk in storms or hurricanes, or by the failure of primitive human technology. Many, but not all. So? I knew where Axe was going. I said, so the rest, including those Japanese flyers, they were sunk by humans in human wars, not by the Nartec. The weapons they used on us, human weapons. We want to hate them for what they do. Maybe we should stop helping them do it. Oh, I see. The Nartec are human. Therefore, this is a commentary on the evils of humanity, making this the cultural equivalent of, I learned it by watching you. So we went through all this bullshit for a generic make peace not war message in a series that is praised for its complex representation of conflict. Yeah, this book is pretty much the suck. Post-book follow-up. If I had to pin down one main issue for this book, it's that every single element seems to be more fitted for something else. The ghostwriter is known best as a comedian, but is stuck writing the most bleak, least fun book in a long, long time. The underwater civilization concept is also better suited for a goofier book. The concept is pretty campy on the surface, but instead is used to serve some heavy-handed hippie commentary that has and will be better executed in other books in this series. And it's not even that the concept is out there that I have a problem with it. I can take sillier plots like this if A, the execution is solid, and B, the themes and ideas are interesting. But our heroes are acting out of character, the emotional center is a dead Hork-Bajir nobody knew, and that is completely fumbled. And the main idea of humans make weapons sometimes and that's bad is more blunt than an Indian crying about litter on the highway. And of course, none of it has any impact on the overall series. It's a complete filler book. The Nartec never show up again and are not mentioned again. There are no more attempts to claim the Pemlite ship, no more mentions of Han, the random Hork-Bajir. Hell, concepts within this book seem to be filler to the book. Queen Sako is built up as the major antagonist, but steps out of the room and is never heard from again. There's a bit where the Animorphs suspect the Nartec might be in possession of a nuclear weapon, but they don't actually do anything about it, and the subplot is dropped as quickly as it's raised. Everything about this book is completely disposable, totally skippable. Also, if the plot is dependent on everyone acting the most stupid way possible, you're doing it wrong. Start over or write something else. There are bad books, and then there are books that are a complete waste of time and do you no service in reading them. I wasn't kidding before. I give number 36 Mutation a 1 out of 10.